Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Welcome everyone into Garden of Doom, and this week we're welcoming in another author. His name is Mark Morton, and he's coming to us from Canada, I believe, right?
Yep, I'm up north.
Excellent. So he's coming to us from the Great White North. He was supplied to us by, I don't know if I've ever said his name before, maybe I shouldn't, but the publicist who's forwarded a bunch of authors and other personalities to the show, which has been good to us. So if you're listening, you know who you are. Thank you. But the book in particular that we're talking about today is the Headmasters, but of course this is Garden of Doom, so we're going to get to know the author as well. But Headmasters is a book that is listed in the young adult section for sort of horror fantasy. I've read a number of the reviews, and a lot of the people were surprised to learn that they were reading something in the young adult category, which I think probably means that's a success. And, you know, without further ado, let's welcome Mark in. I mean, thank you for coming to the show. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you, Jeff. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, terrific. To tell everyone a little bit about your background, because you didn't jump into writing, you know, horror, fantasy, or young adult. I mean, it looks like you've written a few award-winning nonfiction books as well.
Yeah, I started when I started writing books, I started with nonfiction. I had just finished a PhD in English literature, and so my head sort of wasn't in an especially creative space, more in a kind of analytic kind of space. And I guess the way I got into writing nonfiction, though, was up in Canada, we have CBC Radio, which I think is kind of like your NPR down there. And so I approached one of the stations, and I said, hey, why don't you let me do a little broadcast about the origins of words, because I've always been really interested in word origins, etymology, it's called. And they said, oh, okay, we'll give you a shot. Worked really well. They liked it. And so I kept doing that for years, about every week. And eventually a publisher contacted me and said, well, you know, we like what we hear on the radio. Would you like to write a book about word origins? And I said, oh, sure, why not? That was great, by the way, having a publisher contact me instead of an author trying to find a publisher.
Yeah.
I think things are a little more difficult now too. And so, yeah, I thought, what should I write about? What theme of words? What topic? And I settled upon food words because everybody likes food. And of course, the great thing about food words, names of food, especially in English, is that we have taken so many food words words from so many different cultures and languages that it's a very rich field in that sense. And so I wrote a book called Cupboard Love, a dictionary of culinary curiosities about the origins of food words. So, for example, do you want me to give you an example or two?
Sure, why not?
Okay. Is this a PG rated podcast or?
Let's start that way. It doesn't have to be, but
okay. Well, let's say the word avocado, for example, actually comes from a word from a language in Central America that meant testicle because of the perceived resemblance. Another example, like when you saute something, actually comes from the French word that means to jump, and you can see that same word in English word somersault.
Which Central American language is the avocado? Is it Nahuatl?
Well, I was hoping you wouldn't ask me that because I've never actually figured out how to pronounce this. I think it's Nahuatl.
Nahuatl. And listen, I came pretty close for a guy who really was just shooting. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, it seems like a lot of words from that language end with this hatl, which is a hard thing to say. I've studied Arabic, and Arabic has some difficult sounds to make.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but Nahuatl, I think, is the name. As far as I know, it's still in existence. So I wrote this book called Cupboard Love. It did pretty well. It was nominated. It was one of 3 books nominated for a Julia Child Award. This is back in 1996, I believe.
Well, she was still alive then. Did she call you? Did she go, "Oh, Mark, I really love your book"?
Oh, you know what? I don't have a lot of regrets in my life. I try not to. But one of my regrets is I could have gone to New York because that's where the event was going to happen. And I didn't. And I can't remember why I didn't. But I so wish I had done that because I could have met her. Because she's a giant in food, every aspect of food.
Sure.
Cooking and language, food language. And quite such a figure in herself. So the book did well, and my publisher said, well, why don't you write another book? I thought, okay, what's the next topic? And I thought about sports, and I thought, I don't really know a lot about sports. And I thought, well, everybody has an interest in love and sex, so my next book was about the origins of words pertaining to love and sex, and it was called The Lover's Tongue, a merry romp through the language of love and sex, I guess. Interestingly, in the UK, the UK publisher bought the rights to it and changed the title there to just Dirty Words. And I thought, well, I guess they know their audience better than I do. UK is the place where Benny Hill originated. So it did pretty well there with that title. And then after that, it was approaching the end of the century. It's probably about 1998 at that point. And I thought, I wonder how people living at the ends of previous centuries celebrated or thought about their centuries ending. And so I contacted a friend, and together we wrote a book about how people at the ends of previous centuries wrote about the ends of their centuries. And there were a lot of parallels between, 1999 and the Y2K stuff, like not Y2K per se, of course, but like at the end of the 19th century, there was a great concern because, it was not long after Charles Darwin and his theory of evolution. People also started thinking about devolution, like the opposite of evolution. And there was a fear that humans were going to devolve and we were going to become stooped and pale,
like Morlocks.
Little toes, all kinds of things because of our sitting at desks.
We become troglodytes from...
Troglodytes, go back to them,
Oh, that'd be great for Garden of Doom if we found a tribe of troglodytes.
It would, yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, under the theory, they would have been middle management or customer service reps or whatever. So it'd be the most boring troglodytes ever. It's
right. Yeah. Well, who knows? Maybe they will. I mean, a few years ago, maybe it's a decade ago now, they did discover that other species of primate. They ended up calling them. I mean, this isn't the scientific name, but in the press, they were called like the Hobbit people.
That's a Homo florensis, and there's also Homo luzernensis. They're just named after like the islands they were found on.
That's right. Yeah. And then the last nonfiction book I wrote was called Cooking with Shakespeare. And my PhD was in 16th century literature, so I approached another friend who was a chef, and together we wrote this book about food culture in 16th century England.
Excellent.
Then my writing came to an abrupt halt because my wife and I adopted 4 older children.
Well, I want to pause there. I don't want to give short shrift to the adoption of 4 children. That's obviously big, but I want to know what went wrong with British cooking after Shakespeare, because that island is not known for its cuisine.
No, it's not, and that's a really good question. Well, I'll say this: in the 16th century and before, going back to the early Middle Ages, there were basically 2 kinds of cuisine in England. There was what the peasants ate, which was oatmeal, herring, stuff like that, nuts. Not even a lot of deer, because
that was the kings. Yeah, I saw Robin Hood. I've done a show on Robin Hood. I know. Those are the king's deer.
Exactly, yeah, on Crown Land. And then there was the aristocracy, the people around the court, and they ate the most extravagant of foods. The general description is that the food that Queen Elizabeth I and her courtiers ate was a lot like Moroccan food. It was like a lot of meat dishes that had raisins and sugar in it, things like that. Sweet dishes that were both sweet and savory. And that's because they could afford it. It was an indication of how wealthy they were. So there were, and also some crazy dishes like roast peacock, and it was served to the table. They would take it out of its skin, cook it, put its skin and feathers back on it, and then they would put a wire in its neck to hold up its head, and then they would put gunpowder into its beak so that it was brought to the table, with flames coming out of its beak.
Ooh, like a dragon.
It was terribly unhealthy food. And in fact, even Queen Elizabeth, an ambassador came from Europe, I forget which country, and he wrote in his diary later that Queen Elizabeth I had little black teeth because they were so corroded.
Correct.
All this sugar. Yeah.
Right. They didn't have any dentists there.
Well, they had teeth pullers, and in fact, one of her courtiers, to demonstrate that having a tooth removed without anesthetic was no big deal, he actually had a healthy tooth pulled out of his mouth just to show her. Oh, it's no big deal, Your Majesty.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there you go. Very, very brave man, I suppose, and not that interested in his oral hygiene either, as it would seem. Okay, now, before we get to the kids, what's the first word ever?
The first word ever. Well, it depends if you're talking about English or if you're talking about Proto-Indo-European.
I'm going proto. I'm going.
Well, nobody knows.
Okay.
There's sort of a couple theories. One is that it was some ancient ancestor made a sound that was imitative of an animal, probably a bird. Or another theory is that it was a vocalization that came out of pain. They stepped on a thorn or something, and from that, language evolved.
Arg. So arg might have been the first word.
It's arg, and it's disputed how that is spelled.
Well, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure there's an umfla somewhere or a tilt somewhere in there.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I read a couple books where, of course, they decided that aleph is the first word, which is cool, except I think we're pretty sure that there were written languages before Hebrew. Actually, I know that we're sure there are, but I have a couple of devout and Orthodox Jews out there who will, tell me that I'm absolutely wrong in that, and that's fine. I cede your point. I'm wrong to you, and that's cool too. All right, to the kids. Let's. I've ignored your kids long enough.
Me too. Yeah, we adopted them, and they were all. I guess ranging from 6 to 10 when we adopted them. And, I'm sure this is the case pretty much anywhere in the world when an older child is adopted. Here in Canada, it's called their maid crown wards. They're taken from their family, maid crown wards, until they can be adopted. And when that happens, it's inevitable that the reason they've been made crown wards is because they've experienced trauma and unhappy childhood, as our kids had, and so they needed, I think, triple or quadruple the amount of attention and love and support that maybe most kids did. So yeah, for the next 15 or 17 years, I wrote almost nothing. I did continue to write a column for Gastronomica, which was a journal of food and culture from University of California Press. But I didn't write any books until they got old enough that I had a bit more time. And so I thought, well, what do I want to write now? And, having raised them, we read lots of things to them and with them. And I thought, well, I'm going to try my hand at fiction. So yeah, I wrote The Headmasters, and is it a young adult novel? I mean, it's marketed that way, probably for just marketing reasons, but I didn't really think of it that way. The main characters are younger, but there are some, what's the word, not mature, not sophisticated, but there are some themes woven through the book that have some depth to them. Themes about identity and culture and memory, things like that.
I had about a year or so ago, I had a New York Times bestselling author on. I think her name was Ginny Myers, and I hope I got it right. And she writes a lot of young adult, and basically she said to me, the only difference is that your main characters are young adults. They're, so E.T. would be in young adult. Stranger Things would be in young adult. The Teen Titans would be in young adult. Doesn't mean that the themes are any different. That just means that's who your protagonists or your main characters are. And I'm like, well, that sounds sort of interesting. And so when I first saw the name of the book, I, jumped to the assumption that it was like, some sort of spooky school, sort of like when they tried to make the New Mutants comic book into a horror movie, which was an abysmal failure, or maybe like an Umbrella Academy. It was some other show. I can't remember what it was, but it was canceled really too soon. It deserved more time. Can't remember the name of it, of course, but it was like where the students they learned regular stuff, but they were also being taught to be assassins. Anyway, I thought it was going to be something spooky like that, or maybe like I remember some horror movie at some point where like it might have been called The Principal, where the principal of a school and some of the faculty were all like, demonic or possessed or whatever. Anyway. Yeah. It is not that. It is very much more, not Headmasters one word, more like Headmasters two words. And so, and there's a whole world, you build it. But I just want to tell you that when I read the description, it took me to two places. One was Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where you saw Donald Sutherland at the end, rest in peace, he just died recently, where at the end his mouth is wide open, the gape, his head's tilted back, and with his finger pointing, in the silent, Edward Schwar's the scream pose, being very terrifying because he was supposed to be the hero or a hero. But really more to, and this shows my geekdom, Babylon 5. So hopefully you watched Babylon 5. So, all right. So for those who didn't, Babylon 5 is a wonderful and terrible show at the same time. It's wonderful in that it's a fantastic story, but it didn't have much of a budget. But it was basically epical, global, basically a good versus evil, but, they played with all the themes that you have in all of the books. But one of the race of characters that are supposed to be the bad characters are the Shadows. And when the Shadows left, they left behind some of their allies. And one of them was like an eel kind of thing that wrapped around someone's neck and attached itself to the neck. And like every now and then you could see it open its eye, and that means it was awake. The only you had to get yourself drunk to get it drunk to get to your regular state. And that's immediately what I went to. Then I saw the drawing, and it's more like on the back a little bit. It's still not so far. So for those of you who saw Babylon 5, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Those of you who didn't, including Mr. Morton, are like, shut up, we don't know what you're talking about. But that's what I jumped to right there. Sort of a little bit of mind control. But yours is, it's different. It's more than that. So I'm going to let the author describe the best, as much as you want to describe, without giving away the book, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right about those connections that you made. Like, as I say, Babylon 5, I didn't watch, but Invasion of the Body Snatchers, I never made that connection, but you're quite right. Donald Sutherland, of course, he he being Canadian, all Canadians have to point out whenever anybody famous is Canadian. He was Canadian. The basic complication from having these bugs, like they appear through some cataclysm, global cataclysm, on the backs of the group of about 200 humans. Everybody else in the world seems to have vanished or been destroyed.
Raptured.
And what's that?
Perhaps raptured.
Raptured? Well, I hadn't thought that, but I'm interested in that as well.
Well, if you didn't think raptured, I guess that's not it.
Well, I don't know. I also think that sometimes the author of a book is the least capable person of interpreting the book. But anyways, yeah. So these headmasters, they look kind of like big wood ticks. That's how I imagine it, like plate-sized wood ticks. They attach themselves to your back, and then they have these two coils that go into your brain. And so for about 18 hours a day, they can control humans. Like not complete control, but basically they give you impulses that make you want to do something, or you can't resist the impulses. I don't know if you've ever had restless leg syndrome. I have. It's an awful thing. You just can't not move your leg. So that's how I thought about how they control people.
No, I think I have the opposite. I think I have restful body syndrome, where my body, but maybe I think some people just call that lethargy. So,
lethargy, yeah. Right.
Did you ever see? Are you familiar with Falling Skies?
With which?
Falling Skies. It was like Noah Wyle. It was sort of like aliens take over, and there's a there's a resistance. Anyway, the aliens there, they also took over, and sort of through the spinal column they attached themselves. Mm-hmm. It's anyway. I was trying to find another common ground, but I keep failing. So you know what? I'm going to give up now.
Well, there is another one though, and I didn't even know about this one until after I had published the book. The author Robert Sawyer, he's won every major science fiction award I think in existence. He wrote a very, very kind, nice blurb for the book. And he pointed out that he said about my book, it's a reinterpretation of The Puppet Masters by Robert Heidenreich for the new millennium. And I thought, Puppet Masters, what's that? And so I'd never read it. I never had heard about it. But I looked it up. I still haven't read it. And yeah, it is kind of similar. The idea of these things taking you over and controlling your thoughts and actions and things like that. I think the wrinkle with mine, though, the thing that maybe sets it apart, is that these headmasters, they get passed on from one person to another. So one is attached to me. When I die, it comes off and it goes on to some other young person who's kept in this kind of nursery, greenery kind of place. And so, some of these headmasters have passed upon 3, 4, 5 times because the timing of the whole novel is about 60, 70 years. And every time it gets passed on, every time that headmaster gets passed on, the memories of the previous host or previous hosts also get transferred to the new host. And that can be very dangerous because if some of those memories from a previous host come into the new host's mind, it can be deadly. And so that's why this community, everybody has agreed, we're not going to talk about the past. Nobody gets to talk about the past because talking about the past might trigger some of these old memories. So it's a community that has no past, and at the same time, they're subjugated, and so they don't really have a future. They can't imagine the future, so they're kind of living in this eternal present, this eternal now. And I found that really interesting, because how does a person construct their own identity if they can't talk about their memories? And how does a culture develop, or how does a culture maintain itself if the past is forbidden? So those are some of the ideas that I was trying to explore through what I think is a pretty interesting plot.
I think over time that you might start confusing your memories with some of those past lives as well. Especially, I mean, it's in the same town. If some of them are similar, and it's almost inevitable, this agreement, like, nobody talks about Fight Club, nobody talks about the past. I mean, it seems to me that it's almost impossible, which I'm sure is important in your book as a plot point. And even if you don't talk about it, if you still think about it,
yep,
or dream about it, I mean, how do you control your own dreams? And
yeah,
you know, I imagine these things are these items, these trigger points are things that you explored.
yeah, yeah. You're quite right. Like sometimes memories just do surface because somebody sees something that reminds reminds one of these memories, or it gets one of these memories to surface. And you're right about the dreaming. What happens to the main character? Her name is Maple. She's about 12 when the novel starts and about 20 when it ends. She's a bit different because she has one of these headmasters that belong to previous person, and she is able, for reasons I won't get into, she is able to acquire those memories of the previous host, and she uses them, tries to leverage them to defeat the headmasters. And another thing you said that is quite right. When these memories start to come back to her, she's not sure. Did I do that? Was that my memory, or is that somebody else's memory? I think that would be very confusing. Like I've sometimes in the middle of the day, I've said to myself, okay, did that happen, or did I dream that? And it's very, very disorienting when you can't tell whether something was real or imaginary.
I'm sure. And Maple, I imagine, is a teenager then.
Yeah. She grows up from 12 to 20. She's called Maple because, it takes place in Canada. We have the maple leaf on our flag. It's set in northern Ontario in the Canadian Shield, which is a very rugged, rough, remote area. Because I wanted the setting, I wanted the scene, the physical topography, to kind of parallel the brutality of the headmasters. And so I think that worked out pretty well.
Let's talk about their brutality. This is Garden of Doom. How brutal were they?
Well, I guess the other thing about the headmasters is they can sense your thoughts. And so if they sense that you are going to try to remove it, they will send a toxin into your brain and you'll drop dead in a couple of seconds. So that, I think, is what creates the real paradox for the humans in the novel, because they can't even think about fighting that.
Oh, well,
and so
that's
hard.
hard.
How do you fight that when you can't even think about it?
Well, how do you train your brain to do that? I mean, I guess is there some sort of like training as a youth, as teachers who teach them that right away? That there's, I mean, you have to brainwash someone, but you've got to be, more North Korea than North Korea.
Yeah, and they have managed to do that pretty well. I mean, as I was writing it, I was kind of thinking about 1984, where Winston in the novel. Talks about the idea of doublethink. I think that's what he calls it, where you forget something, you make yourself forget something, but then you have to go one step further. You have to make yourself forget that you've forgotten. So there's something kind of like that that's happening in the novel as well, until Maple comes along.
Well, it either has to be some sort of behavioral programming that's so strong, so instilled at such a young age that can't be broken, almost through reverse hypnosis, that it's always there while you're awake, which is, okay, how do they get, the people who are instilling this programming into the youths? Well, they can't even really remember why they're doing it, or they've been trained to think, again, from infancy forward, that this is the best in life. This is the ideal. I mean, we're serving the Pharaoh.
Yeah, it's more the latter of what you were saying. There's a handful of characters in the novel, in this community of 200 or so people, who have become so, I don't want to say brainwashed, but so they've grown up in this culture to such an extent that they actually want the headmasters to be on them, because the headmasters mean they don't have to make any decisions. As a human, I just do what the headmaster says. That subgroup is called the Thankfuls, because they are thankful for the headmasters. So there are, and then there's three people who were among the original people, like who are very old in the novel, and they are the only ones who can recall what life was like before the Headmasters. And my feeling is that if this was going to change, if the Headmasters were going to get defeated, it had to happen before those three people died, because at that point, all history, all sense of what might have been or what used to be would be gone.
Now, this is, you said it's in Ontario, so it's Earth. Obviously, it's dystopian. It's not this version of Earth. But, I mean, wouldn't all technology and computers need to be at least largely censored? And, I mean, if I understood correctly, everyone outside of this town is gone. They're dead, or at least as far as we know. So, I mean, I guess there's one of the reasons is self-preservation. A, you want to get rid of a headmaster, they're going to kill you. But B, there's no other way of living on this planet without them, which maybe is the same reason, but it's two different motivations, even though the cause might be the cause and effect might be the same.
Yeah, and when this cataclysm happened, 60 years before the main action begins, I vaguely refer to it as some sort of EMP that took out all electronics and communications and things like that. So that's why they're not able to communicate with anybody right after it happens. And then, not long after that, nobody's repairing these things and they just fall into disuse. And if anybody were to try to walk away, well, the nearest city would be Sudbury, which would be like a couple hundred miles away. And they might try to do that when the headmasters sleep, which is sort of what happens for about 4 hours every day. So they could walk away, the humans could walk away for 4 hours, but then as soon as the headmasters woke up, they would start to give them jolts of pain to force them to go back. So that's part of the conundrum, the terrible situation that they're in. And I mean, by no means is my novel an allegory, but I did want it to kind of echo a situation that I think a lot of people on our planet experience. These might be people who live in inner cities, really big cities. Many indigenous people in Canada who have been treated terribly by the government for 400 years. Refugees, people who are fleeing war. I think they might end up feeling so despairing, so hopeless, that they feel like, why even bother? There's no way that I can get out of this. And it's just this cycle of hopelessness continues. And I think that's when the tragedy really takes place, when you just get to the point where
you give up.
Yeah.
This is maybe less tragic, though more hopeless than that, in that you can't even think that there's something better. I mean, even the person in the plight that you were just describing, can dream. And I'm sure, everybody in every town knows somebody that got out of their circumstance. While it might be 1 out of 10 or, 1 out of 50 or whatever, there's always somebody. That 1 out of 50, if they just thought the wrong thing, at least outside of those 4 hours, they're dead. But I guess they have 4 hours a day where they can think and dream and whatever, but then they have to learn how to shut it on and shut it off. Exactly. Also, if the headmasters are smart with their timing, they go to sleep around the same time their host is, probably exhausted and needs to get their 8 hours of sleep as well. Probably wouldn't be too hard to time. Where did the headmasters come from? Do you address that, or is that not even really important?
I don't really address that. I mean, there is this cataclysm, EMP, that I talk about, which apparently has killed everybody outside of this community. The EMP originated from within the community because it was a research station in Northern Ontario.
What were they researching?
What they were trying to do was capture energy from solar flares as a way of, powering, another energy source.
Okay.
And so they were kind of successful, except this one solar flare, or a series of solar flares, were so powerful that it just overwhelmed the system and turned it into a EMP, like a gamma ray burst. And that's what kind of destroyed the world. And what I kind of hint at is that it also sort of created a rift in the space-time continuum that these headmasters came through. So it's not like they came here intentionally or wanted to come here. So in a way, the headmasters themselves are stuck. They're prisoners as well. And they can't be destroyed. Which raises the question, again, don't want to say too much, but it raises the question of what do you do with the headmasters if you can defeat them, if you can get them to detach from humans? What are you going to do with them? They're invulnerable, so to speak.
Well, so they're also sentient. I mean, there is that, but I guess if it's kill or be killed. But yeah, how do you kill them? How do you isolate them? But also, we're talking about one person. When we say you, it's not even a collective you; it's a singular you. So the Maple would have to recruit others, presumably during this 4-hour time span, who don't let it slip during the rest of their 20 hours, either consciously or subconsciously, and against all of their behavioral programming their entire lives. So she's got to be either really persuasive, but almost has to counter-train them. I mean, she'd have to have a whole lot of skill sets that a 15 or 16 or 17-year-old probably wouldn't have.
I think she is a remarkable person for sure. But she not until the very, very, very end does she try to enlist any of the others, because if they become aware of her plan, then their headmasters will become aware of it. What she does do is she is able to sort of, in the 4 hours that the headmasters are not in control of the humans, I said they were asleep. They're not quite asleep. They're conversing with one another in this kind of collective mind space. And Maple is eventually able to kind of access them through that space, we'll say. And yeah, I don't want to say any more, but until the very, very end, she's doing this alone.
Will there be sequels, or is this going to be a standalone?
Well, I'd be interested, and I did throw in some things into the headmasters so that I could grab onto them and write a sequel. But I didn't think there was any point in writing a sequel until this one got published.
Sure.
It took me a while to find a publisher, so I started writing a different novel. I finished that, looking for a publisher for that one. Started a third one even. But after I'm done this third one, maybe I will come back and write a sequel to the Headmasters, because it was a lot of fun. It was really, really a lot of fun to create this puzzle and then have the character figure out how to solve it.
Right. So we're not sure, I'm not sure you're sure, but we're not sure if they're aliens or demons, or if they've been some sort of life form. They've been sharing the earth with us this whole time, but they got sort of pulled by either the EMP caused by the overly successful experiment, or if they were sort of dragged in here through, some sort of dimension, whatever. It was the energy opened up, cue Marvel or DC movie here where, some sort of timeline was intertwined, or it opened up the multiverse of this particular madness.
Yep.
And so these guys are here. But are there other headmasters still out there from their home world, home universe, home dimension?
That's something I would want to explore if I were to write a sequel. And going back to something I was saying earlier, I think it might be interesting to write something that takes more account of what the experience of being a headmaster is. Because as I was saying, they're pulled out of their world, wherever that is. And even though they are brutal, I mean...
Well, a shark is brutal, but,
What's that?
A shark is brutal. A wolf is brutal.
Yeah. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm not a vegetarian. I'm not a vegan. But I know that some people who are would say that what we do to animals is brutal.
Right.
We see them as something that we can use, and I think, the headmasters, that's maybe just how they see the humans. They use the humans in order to basically communicate with each other during the 4 hours of this sleep.
Sure.
Because if they didn't have that, they would all be utterly isolated from each other.
Sure. Maybe the headmasters have their own doctrine, their own religion of holy books that said that their creator created everything else to serve them, much as many of our holy books and holy doctrine said that, basically the earth was created, to serve humans.
Exactly.
I was thinking when you were saying that, I'm like, the Watchman says, "Who watches the Watchman?"
Yeah.
So who are the masters to the headmasters? I mean, who do they serve?
Yeah. There's so many ways, so many directions that I could take a sequel. But I still haven't decided if I want to yet. Like the second novel that I've written, it's also dystopian, but it's not. It's definitely not YA. It's not young adult. It's much more graphic.
Do tell.
It's pardon me.
Do tell.
Well, the premise is that this time a kind of global neurological event takes place. Again, it's not explained why. I'm not really interested in the whys of these things, but it's just taken as a fact. And the impact of it is that every human on Earth, with some exceptions that I'll mention, their language, their vocabulary becomes scrambled in their head. So that for me, this is no longer a cup, this is a turkey. And for you, it's the conjunction but or something like that. Conjunction although. So nobody can understand each other anymore. This leads to chaos and civic mayhem, and the world basically falls apart very quickly, except for about 1 in maybe 1,000 people who happen to be in a particular kind of location when this occurred, and they were unaffected. And one of them, the protagonist, her name is Megan Laughlin, and she's trying to flee her city. And as she's fleeing it, she comes across 4 children who have been unaffected. She basically adopts them. So that part is coming out of my life.
Yeah, it's a little self-biography here.
Yeah. It is. And they make their way to the shore, to the Atlantic shore, somewhere along Connecticut is where I imagine this one. And the kids grow up, but then something awful happens which causes their adoptive mother, their mother, Megan, to say, you've got to go back out into the world. You have to go out and make your own way for some time. And so then the rest of the novel follows their different journeys, because they do it separately, until they all are reunited at the end, in a not entirely happy way.
Gotcha.
Living in a post-apocalyptic world, it can be hard on a person.
I would imagine. I've seen a lot of post-apocalyptic movies and read a few books, and none of them seem particularly happy. I mean, usually zombies or brigands or both.
Yeah. What is your favorite?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I mean, if you consider the Dark Tower series to be dystopian, I guess maybe that. As far as the actual movie, The Matrix, I don't think can be topped, but all of the properties after The Matrix are horrendous. And Terminator. I mean, how's Terminator not in there? I'll go with those. I mean, The Stand is a good one. The only problem with The Stand for me is that every time it got scary, the situation was resolved like instantly. Like as soon as I'm like, I gotta find what happens next. Then he's like, and then the monster went away. Oh, that's great. It's almost like The Stand was meant for young adults, but wasn't for young adults. But for readers. I don't know. I'm sure I'm forgetting a million. I'm not even sure that I was aware that all of the Sword of Shannara and Elfstones of Shannara was post-apocalyptic when I was reading them at, ages 11, 12, and 13. But I don't know. What are some of yours?
Well, right now I haven't yet finished this series, but I'm really, really enjoying it. The Last of Us. I think it's just genius. Like I like series like The Walking Dead and what's it called? The other one that's on right now.
Fear the Walking Dead?
No, it's not related to that. Oh, darn. Anyways, they're sort of very plot oriented. Like this happens and this happens and this happens. When I watch The Walking Dead, I don't get a sense that there's a lot of exploration of deep ideas, which is fine. It's kind of escapist. I prefer things that explore ideas at the same time. So something like Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, another Canadian. I admire that book so much. I haven't seen the series.
It's okay. See, I didn't read the book, but I saw the series. It starts off really good.
Yeah.
It starts off good. It ends good. Let's just put that. It's not for me. That doesn't mean it's not for you. It doesn't mean it's not for other people. It wasn't for me. It was, I don't know. It seemed to me like it was too much for somebody who lived on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, who really enjoyed the theater and their ideas to what a dystopian future might be.
Yeah. What else do I really like? The problem with me is I'm watching so many series and reading so many different books at the same time. Sometimes I'll forget that I'm reading this particular book, and then I'll open up my Kindle months later and go, oh yeah, I didn't even finish that. But it does seem like, on the one hand, it has seemed like it's sort of the golden age of dystopian, post-apocalyptic stuff, but almost so much that it's like things are getting saturated. Zombies for a while was everything that was hot.
Well,
vampires have been done, so we need some sort of new.
Well, it's also what is dystopian? It is, was Blade Runner dystopian, or was it just futurism? Is Altered Carbon, which, season 2 was abysmal, but season 1 was pretty good. But the books are good. Is that dystopian, or is it just futurist? I read a book. I read a book called 13, which I loved it. And same thing. Is it dystopian, or is it just future?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess for me it would come down to, is this the kind of place where I would want to live? Like you could have all kinds of conflict and exciting stuff happening, but the world itself in which it's occurring could be a good world, mostly good world.
I am laughing right now because, like, if you were an outsider, if you were in like a giant floating, not submarine, but whatever the opposite of a submarine is, in the air, looking down upon this world, would this be the world that you'd want to live in necessarily?
Yeah.
So, I don't know that, ever, people look at things in the past and they're like, oh, sure, I'd want to live there. Really? You'd want to be like, it take you 3 months to travel to the next town, and you'd probably be robbed 17 times on the way there if you were that lucky, or and there's no McDonald's along the way. Not that McDonald's is great, but at least when you're driving on the highways that every even in the rural areas, every 50 to 250 miles there's going to be a gas station and probably some fast food restaurant.
Tim Hortons up here in Canada.
Tim Hortons there. Yeah, and here in the United States, there's never a rest stop without at least 3 or 4, because this is America. So
No, I take your point, but our world is. I've been feeling this a lot, especially the last few years. I guess maybe since the pandemic, but then the emergence of AI. I'm kind of worried about that.
You think? Yeah. And when they show us, okay, so we were talking pre-production. I mentioned I did a UFL podcast with my son, and the only reason for it is during the championship game when they were doing the honor guard and handling the ball, they had one of those robot dogs, hand the game ball to the ref before they did the coin toss or whatever they did. Now I've seen that same robot dog on the show. Oh my God, why is his name escaping me? H.G. Wells did it in like 1920s movie. What's this? War of the Worlds. Okay, well, there was a War of the World. Gabriel Byrne was the and they had these dogs.
That's Canadian France co-production.
Yep, and they could shoot a bullet from like the dog's snout. I have seen the pictures from China of one that's wearing a flamethrower. I've had a gentleman who makes robots like that on this very show. I think it was a Garden Views. I'm having him on again, probably for a Garden of Doom, because I think we're going to get into the more scary. And listen, this is what they have told me. And I'm sorry to the audience if you've heard this before, and you probably have, but remember, I'm speaking to Mr. Morton for the first time. They tell me, the people who believe in AI, and that it can't exceed us because it can only do what we program it to do. Well, excuse me, I don't believe that. I believe that, like Ultron in Avengers Age of Ultron, they tell us AI is stupid when you first meet it, and it gets smarter because it learns, because it has access and the data scrapes everything, which means that it already will exceed us. And as proof, though it's not exactly proof, and as a word guy, you will probably appreciate this little irony, but there are Akkadian tablets, a language that we have not deciphered yet. And they gave the tablets to AI, and AI deciphered it. AI translated it. Of course, we don't know if it's right or even close to right because we haven't translated it. So, but if it has, and that, we don't know, it has exceeded us there. If it knows every part of the human brain, it's exceeded any particular human or team of humans out there. So, I mean, and we've just talked about Terminator, iRobot, Ultron, whatever, 2001. I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that. I mean, well, what is it to say that the AI doesn't come to the same conclusion? I mean, I remember RoboCop, where there was a program that you couldn't hurt your creator, but he found a way around to manually override that. So I mean, I think even Danger Will Robinson had that, Lost in Space. So I don't know. I'm going on a little bit of a ramble here, but I'm with you. I don't believe that we have any idea what the ability of AI is, and just like. Sort of like your book that you're thinking of working on, it's sort of like a Tower of Babel kind of thing. Sort of like Babel, we don't know what we unleash. Frankenstein, we don't know what we unleash. Godzilla, we don't know who we unleash. Jurassic Park. I mean, how many fiction and futurist authors do we need to learn this lesson? I mean, pretty much everything Arthur C. Clarke wrote in 2001 is utilized now.
It all kind of goes back to Mary Shelley and Frankenstein. I mean, humans creating something that, in their arrogance, which they come to fear and has the potential to destroy them. I mean, it would seem to me, I mean, chess computers now, chess programs, can far exceed any human. So that would seem to suggest that they can exceed our abilities. But also, I think an even stronger analogy is we can raise children who are smarter than us, who exceed our abilities. I mean, we do that every generation. Every generation has acquired more technology. It's not like we just replicate our level of technology with every generation. So, it makes me glum. Maybe it'll be the best thing for the world. Maybe humans will be gone and AI will look after the planet Earth.
Oh, that best thing for the world. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a pretty good chance of that one, too. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there'll be improvement. I'm sure that medical diagnoses will be far improved. I'm sure there'll be lots of efficiencies all over the place. I mean, I think there's plenty of opportunities for cyber criminals and for con artists and for, bad faith advertising agencies, or maybe good faith advertising agencies that they're representing their clients. I don't know. Defense attorneys. I mean, those ethical rules of being truthful and zealously advocating for your client are really going to be tested. I bet some aggressive prosecutors, their ethics going to have to be tested if they can alter some video to. There's a wonderful British show called The Capture, and it's all about this stuff. Also, William Gibson writes some stuff on this. The book Spook Country actually described it as art, but it's the same thing. And Neil Stephenson explored it, way before I even knew what he was exploring in Reamdy in the fall. But it's sort of here and just upon us. There's so many things I'm scared of. I mean, my show Garden Views, a lot of it deals with legal issues and a lot of it is the law of space. And one of the things I'm afraid of is that we're going to create another British East India Company. And what do I see every day? Let's SpaceX and everyone else getting contracts, because it saves taxpayer dollars. It's only a matter of time before they feel like they have not just government money to fund it, but government assets, meaning whatever the space equivalent is of the Marines, just like the trade ships had, British Marines on them, and, executives became military viceroy governors of islands. And it also smacks of colonialism. And I know that we don't think that there's necessarily anything out there. And I know that we did know that there were people here, and we, tried to come up with reasons to say they're not people like we're people. And that, but we know. I mean, I wasn't alive then, but I suspect people know. But we really don't know that there's not anything out there. It's like, and I heard very good faith people going, we go to space because that's next. What's next? That's where we go next. Well, isn't that what people said 500 years ago? We go to the New World because that's what's next. I mean, it's so.
Yeah, the parallels are very, very close, I think.
Yeah, so see, you are in Garden of Doom for a reason. I mean, there is.
Well, that's true. I'm glad you reminded me of that.
Yeah. We're on brand here, and we try to chuckle about it, but I mean, there's nothing I can do about AI, and I actually hope all of those people are right. But the guy who wrote the ChatGPT book was on the show and said, "Be afraid, be very afraid." After he told me he spoke to his copyright attorney, who told him he can't get a copyright on this because you didn't write it.
That's amazing. I'm sure you know of Ray Kurzweil, right?
Yes, this is such a small world. Yes, and I've heard him, and I think he's a genius, and I actually have a solicitation to come on the show, and apparently he's considering it. But listen, my show is really small for him, and he's a really big deal, so don't tell anyone this is a small show because I really want him to come on. He's optimistic, though. He as far as futurists, him and Yuval Harari are sort of on the optimistic side of futurists. So let's talk about that. We can do a little bit of Gardner. I hope you tell me about the work of Ray Kurzweil and that and what you think.
Well, I think, I agree. He's a genius. I mean, I think since he was 15, he was a genius. He was on the cover of Time magazine when he was like 17 or something like that. And I think he's right. He seems to be right about predicting, the increasing technology and computing power of chips and things like that. He wants to live long enough, I believe, which I think he says is 2045 is his prediction, 20 years basically. He thinks that if he can live that long, that artificial intelligence and nanotechnology will be sophisticated enough and will combine so that his body could be injected with them and it would undo his aging. And potentially live until a piano falls on somebody, on his head, something like that.
Well, that's altered carbon, but it's also Neil Stephenson's The Fall. I mean, you and even if the piano falls on, you can download your essence somewhere. So even if the piano falls on, you just have to get new body insurance.
Yep.
But by the way, that's exactly what Lex Luthor was trying to do. I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, Lex Luthor is Superman's arch nemesis and has been spending all of his time trying to become as powerful as Superman, or at least immortal. So, I know he thinks the singularity is upon us. A lot of people, but he thinks that's a positive. Okay, great. I would love for there to be an economy that could support immortality. Should you really want immortality? I mean, that's another question which I don't think I'm prepared to tackle today. But he is very optimistic about technology catching up to and reversing the impacts of global warming. And I guess that's where he believes that the economy catches up so that, when energy is free, and there's also something about food and water creation that we can manufacture meats and plants and things that are completely edible but that don't require ranches and stockyards and slaughterhouses, etc., so that we can live forever and have all the resources we need. I mean, it doesn't really talk about space, and I don't mean space, the final frontier. I mean like real estate space, like space where people walk.
Yeah.
Though
yeah.
I do. I mean, I am aware that. Well, I'm aware that I read a stat that if you took every person on Earth and put them side by side, standing together, that they would fit it within the state of Rhode Island. I haven't tested it myself, but I'm going to assume that person is correct.
Well, there's a lot of space up here in Canada. Like 95% of the Canadian population lives within, I forget what it is, something like hundreds to miles, 60 miles of the Canadian-U.S. border. There's thousands of miles further north. There's lots of room. My concern about what Ray Kurzweil is talking about is that it's going to exacerbate inequities that currently exist. So there's going to be, a small, the 1%ers, let's say, who achieve quasi-immortality because they can afford it, and the others who can't, and they become the expendable ones. I mean, there's a movie starring Matt Damon, I think, that was kind of about that. The elites.
Elysium.
Yes, that's right. Same kind of idea. Yeah.
Yes, you're exactly right. Yeah. And I'm sure it's not the only one. And yes, in Altered Carbon, the wealthy lived much better and literally higher up than most people. It was very sort of very Blade Runner-ish. And no, I think that you're exactly right, though. I guess if you live forever, you have a chance to make it big. I don't know. I mean, all of these things to me, any sort of immortality to me, and I am not a socialist. I am not necessarily anti-socialistic, if that's what we all want to be, and I think there's some cases for that. I mean, the Scandinavian countries seem to lead the world in happiness, and they are socialistic. I do not ignore the fact that they don't really have to pay for their own defense, and that's probably a big aid to them. But I do worry that you're going to have, if you're going to create this kind of singularity where people can live forever, you're going to have to create a currency-free system, which is fine, except that who's going to do anything? I mean, there's still going to be artists who want to do art. There's still going to be people who are inspired to do something. But for most of us, I mean, it's like, I hate to go to another movie, the Pixar movie WALL-E, where everyone's living in ships and we're all 400 pounds lying around because we never have to do anything. But other than that, we have to be in a constant state of war to maintain the population, even though you don't need to maintain the population because we got nothing else to do.
Yeah, that reminds me, Oscar Wilde has a play, I forget which one it is. It's not The Importance of Being Earnest, but one of the characters, very kind of florid, upper crust person says, as for living, we'll have our servants do that for us. So much has happened in my lifetime. My grandmother was born in 1898, before the Wright brothers. Just the amount of change that has happened since she was born is mind-boggling. And the stuff with AI, I think people are underestimating how quickly it's going to happen. I don't think we're talking 50 or 60 years. I think we're talking 5 or 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, no, it's here. Tech moves fast, and people don't always move that fast, and I'm one of them. I'm that person who is right there in that year where you could say, yes, I'm really going to learn about computers, or you could sort of go like this, hide your eyes, and say, computers is just a fad. I'm the one that said computers are just a fad. So everyone a year behind me or 2 years behind me knew better. Ahead of me, there's some like me. There's others that were smarter, but I'm the guy who made the wrong decision then, and things catch up fast. But I mean, I hear people all the time saying the weather is crazy. What's going on? I'm like, well, if only anyone had been warning you for the past 40 years.
Yeah. And Kurzweil, maybe AI can solve that problem, but at the same time, AI takes a tremendous amount of energy. I mean, just ChatGPT and the other ones, I mean, the amount of energy they consume is as much as some small countries.
Yeah.
To keep the servers cool, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the other part. But again, Kurzweil reconciles this that the energy will be cheaper, freer, cleaner, easier to. I mean, that's the thing about Bitcoin is that it costs so much energy to. I don't pretend to understand why so much computing technology is needed for basically what's imaginary money. I guess it grounds the lack of imagination, but I mean. Forgetting that Jeff thinks that it's all a Ponzi scheme, or at least mostly a Ponzi scheme, it does cost all, to take all this energy. And yeah, they have my understanding is that there's like giant subterranean, like 8-story, 10-story deep, like computer server pits, like in Kazakhstan, in other countries they probably need the rent. They're doing that and probably could use the energy for other things, but they're not being paid to use the energy for other things.
I've heard too that some of these big server farms are on big ships offshore, like in international waters, because that way they're not being restricted. I don't know.
That sounds.
Now I'm getting into conspiracy.
Well, unless it's true, but I mean, I can verify that in international waters there's no policing except by those who want to do the policing, and I not only have I done a show on law of the sea, because it related directly to what might be space law, but I also had a spy on who said basically. Yeah, there's things that we can do in international air that, we don't really have to answer to anybody what's going on there. And so, it's like, okay, and listen, it's on the show. It's not like I'm telling a secret. He said it on my podcast, which means he probably said it on 300 other podcasts and his book. But in any event, wow, we have really gone into a conversation on the entire future, which is awesome. That is terrific. But it reminds me why you're here. So let's again drift back into the book and books that are for sale. Where can they buy them? How can they buy them? What are the titles? Who's publishing them? Is Amazon the best platform? Barnes & Noble's? Is it your website?
In terms of ease of a reader getting them, Amazon, Barnes & Noble's. In Canada, we have something called Indigo, which is we have Amazon, of course, as well. But Indigo is a bricks and mortar store as well. All of those have it easy to order. If you want to support your local bookstore, they probably won't have it on their shelves, but you can always order it, and it will arrive not the next day like with Amazon, but a week later or so. So, and this is almost the problem though with trying to sell books these days is there's so much out there that it's hard to find what one wants to read. And what I have found useful, it's not really, I used to read a lot of reviews like in the New York Times and so on, but now what I do is I've just found some people who seem to have similar tastes to me on Goodreads, and they recommend something, and I'll buy it and I'll read it, and that seems to be working well. So it's almost a kind of word of mouth, but online. Anyways, it's if somebody wants to find the Headmasters by Mark Morton, they just do a search for it and they'll be able to get it.
Yeah, and you'll see links to Amazon and the aforesaid Goodreads, and there are reviews and the quote from Robert Sawyer about Robert Heinlein's book is there as well. First, I saw that as well, and yeah. So listen, it sounds really interesting. I akin everything to Lost now because I'm rewatching the series Lost. Sort of a mystery box, and it's sort of like abandon all hope, but one person has hope. Excuse me, and it's a little bit of that.
Yep, exactly. I love that phrase, abandon all hope. When I went to Paris once, I went to the catacombs, and then you come to this stone archway. And it says in Italian, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here."
Right.
It's
the entrance to hell for Virgil's. Was that from the Aeneid or Paradise Lost? It's one of those.
Yeah. Oh, it's Divine Comedy. That's what it is. Yeah.
Dante, right. So it's also, of course, in my favorite book, The Descent, which is all about underground hell. But it was like, shut up, Jeff, you're talking about The Descent again. Listen, audience, you're lucky I'm not talking about Lilith, the Anunnaki, and then the Nephilim this episode. So, I tend to, lump a bunch of things together. Those are sort of my little thing. Those are the things that sort of got me to do this show. But very, very interesting. And the totally inane mystery box show that was Land of the Lost that I watched as a child and as an adult, I convinced myself it had to have deep meaning, and I assure you it doesn't.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
It did no deep meaning, no hidden symbols. It was just exactly...
It took place in prehistoric times, didn't it?
Well, yes, but it was really in some sort of mystery box, sort of self-contained dimension. Yeah. But it is the original, Lost, or whichever, they call them mystery box shows now, and I think that fits well enough. And this seems, like Stephen King's Under the Dome, which is a little bit different, but that's what yours sounds like. It sounds like a bit of a mystery box, although there is another big wide world out there, but you just can't go there because there's no one there. And I presume since you grow up so limited that you probably really can't take care of yourself.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
For sure.
It was really nice meeting you. I'm glad that we strayed into all these wild and wacky futurists and AI and whatever and doomy kind of. I had no idea we were going to go into that, but that's the nice thing about the Garden of Doom is that we meandering is not just allowed; it's encouraged. But yeah, check out the Headmasters. The reviews are really good. People are enjoying it. And there were some comments like, I really didn't think I was going to like this book. Next thing I know, it was done. I didn't stop reading it all day. I didn't realize this was a young adult book until I saw that's the category. It didn't feel like it. And someone said, this might be my favorite book of 2024. So, the reviews are very nice. So if this sounds at all interesting to you, all, spooky, and then you want to see how maple syrups her way out of this, then you can check it out. Mark, it was a pleasure meeting you, and thank you for coming into the Garden of the Doom.
Thank you. Thanks, John.